If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, I would use the first 55 minutes determining the proper questions to ask. Albert Einstein. I think what Einstein might have meant by this was if he wasn't careful, a question worded wrongly could take him in the wrong direction. Or maybe he meant he had to really understand the questions he was asking in order to understand where he was going and what he was trying to solve. If we think about trick questions, they use the same principle. You have to pay attention to how questions are phrased. How questions are phrased gives you clues on how to think about the problem. Let's check out some trick questions. Wait for it. A second. So, speaking of questions, I was looking at your Be the Change research logs last week. And before we talk about your work, your next steps, and how to grow, I gotta be honest, the majority of you didn't submit it to Schoology. So what I'd like you to do right now is, in the chat box, tell me what group you're in, how far along you are on your research log. Are you in group A? You've chosen a topic, but are still working on the questions. Are you in group B? You wrote your questions, but you're working on finding evidence. Are you in group C? You've gathered evidence and are working on what the evidence shows. Are you in group D? You have plenty of evidence and analysis, but aren't clear about your focus. I'll pause the video here for you to chat where you are in your research, group A, B, C, or D. Go ahead, chat away. Thanks, that was helpful. Now, let me share with you what I've noticed and our next steps for learning. Even though people belong to different groups in terms of how much you've gotten done, almost all of you had a challenge with asking questions. Let me explain what I mean by that. I'm really proud of how many of you went right to level 3 questions. I'd asked you to do that, but I realize there's a puzzle piece that we're missing. Remember from a few weeks ago when we started our research unit, what we defined research as? Well, we defined it as something we do in order to find out things in a systematic way in order to increase our knowledge. So today, we're learning to frame our questions with what, why, and how. We're going to learn to arrange our questions from level 2 to level 3. Learn how to insert follow-up questions. This will give our research a clearer organization and a tighter focus. So let me talk a bit about some of your successes and challenges. Take a look at these questions. They're strong, very strong. They're level 3 questions, but they made me realize something. I remember saying that you should only be setting up your research with only high-level questions. Now, looking at your research logs, I learned something as a teacher. These questions, for example, go deep, fast, maybe too fast. The danger for this student is as she researches, she might get lost in some really deep issues without first establishing the basics, the background. She can get easily lost in a rabbit hole of important arguments and information, and then she won't know how to construct her evidence in an easier to understand sequence. This particular student might need to build in some level 2 questions to go to the deeper place. Now, check out this set of questions. They're also strong and for the same reason. They're high level questions. But these questions, excuse me, focus only on the effects of women playing pro soccer. I can imagine these questions forming the heart of the student's project. But now I wonder, how is the student going to introduce her topic and why these issues are even important? And what about these? I think these are cool questions. I think they're about comparing the popularity of women's sports to men's sports, but I'm not 100% certain. They also seem to have the potential of going in completely different directions. And then, what might happen to this student's research? She might end up gathering a bunch of evidence, but finally not knowing how to put it together. And then, finally, this student has a really clear topic: social bias caused by COVID-19. But all these questions, they seem to stay on the same general level. And because the form of the questions are broad and general, this student's answers will most likely also be generalizations. And let's remember Einstein's quote: how you form the questions will dictate or determine the kind of answers you get. So, how do we solve this problem? Some questions go too fast, too deep, or too deep, too fast. Some have a lack of background. Some go in different directions without a clear focus, and some are formed in ways that will give incomplete answers. Let's take a look at another video. Wait for it.
Animals can do all sorts of clever things that we do. They can use tools, problem solve, communicate, cooperate, exhibit curiosity, plan for the future. And although we can't know for sure, many animals certainly act as if they feel emotions: loneliness, fear, joy. Apes have even been taught to use language to talk to us humans. It's a sort of sign language that they've used to do everything from answer questions to express emotion or even produce novel thoughts. Unlike any other animal, these apes are able to understand language and form responses at about the level of a 2.5-year-old human child. But there's something that no signing ape has ever done. No ape has ever asked a question. They have never wondered out loud about anything that we might know that they don't.
I'd like you to think back to when you were 5 years old. We asked, on average, 65 questions per day, most of them starting with why. The average 8-year-old asks 41 questions per day, and by the time we are 44 years old, we only ask 6 questions per day, most of them starting with when, where, or how much. The number of questions we ask per day doesn't increase until retirement. Now, why retirement? Because that's when we start asking, where are my keys and why did I walk into this room? It could be said that we entered school as question marks and we graduated as periods. Now that's depressing. Dr. Jonas Salk, the medical researcher who developed the first polio vaccine, said, "The answer to any problem pre-exists. We need to ask the right question to reveal the right answer." We don't find, create, or invent creative solutions. We reveal them by asking great questions. Asking great questions is a three-step process. You start with what and then why questions before you ever ask how questions. Now, my favorite first question to ask about any challenge I'm dealing with is, what is the result we want to see, feel, and hear? Then I like to ask, why do we want to achieve this result? Finally, how are we going to achieve this result? The order to these questions is very important. If you start off asking the how,
Oops, that's fine. Let's go back here. Give it a second. So it sounds like we have to be more systematic in how we're asking questions. It sounds like it'll be really helpful to ask questions in this order: what, why, and how. And because this is the Be the Change project, I'm going to form my question stems around the topic of change. So I'm going to start thinking about my questions in terms of what is the issue, topic, or problem. I'm defining my topic and question. I'm defining my topic and problem. Then secondly, I'm going to ask, why was there a need for a change in the past? Or why does the thing I'm talking about need a change now? And then finally, I'm going to do some of my deeper thinking or analyses. How did this thing change? Or how should change take place? It sounds like it'll be really helpful to answer these questions in order because they'll give our topic, our research, much more organization. And so when I was looking across your research logs, I also came across this particular student's research log. I noticed she inserted a column that says follow-up questions. And as I read, I noticed a huge benefit from doing this. It allowed the student to add background information. And she taught me something, and I wanted to share this with you. We do need a way to include questions that will help build in background info. And background information in our research will help us do this. It'll help us answer the following questions. Who or what is affected by the issue? And what are the causes of the problem? So these are my questions from last week. I was happy with these last week, but given what I've learned today, I'm no longer happy with them. They're far too general. And because of this, my research would probably lack a clear focus if I stuck with these questions. Also, I really could use a space to include background info so my reader will understand the issues involved in whites taking ownership of a black form of music. So I'm rewriting my questions. And this week, you're going to rewrite your questions too. I'm going to rewrite my questions into the what, why, and how phrases in that order. I'm going to include a new column for background info. That way I can keep my what, why, and how questions organized. Now, if you're confused about adding a new column, you may include your background info questions in your original column. Just label them as background info. So, your assignment is due Thursday for your social studies class. I do want you to upload today's assignment to your LA Schoology page so I can review your questions. Here's your assignment. Please rewrite your questions so they follow this sequence: what, why, and how. Then add follow-up questions. You can create a new column or put them in the same question column, but label them. We're doing what Einstein would do. We're taking the time in the beginning of our project and clarifying and organizing our questions. If we do this, the research will go so much smoother because we're moving forward systematically. Now, the video of this assignment will be posted on Schoology. I'm going to pause the video here for some of your own follow-up questions. Guys and girls in the chat box, or go off mic, go off mute. What questions do you now have? Now, if questions come to mind later, feel free to send me a message. I'll leave you with these words from another great physicist. Wait for it.
I think often about the questions we do not yet know to ask because discoveries yet to come, but when they arrive, will put us in a new vista, a new place to stand, enabling us to see questions undreamt of and unimagined before we got there. So when I again lay awake at night, I ponder what kinds of questions lay beyond our reach. Because the questions that we even know how to pose, they're there. Those are not even interesting to me anymore because we knew how to ask the question. I want to know the question that is beyond everyone's reach. And by definition, I can't because we haven't gotten there yet. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't dream of that frontier.
I look forward to seeing your work. Please submit your new questions to me by Thursday. Have a great day. Bye.